Private jets aren't about luxury, they're about control. The biggest misconception about private jets is that they are all about luxury. They're not. The leather seats, champagne, and private terminals are only the visible part. What the passenger is really buying changes at every stage. First access, then control, then certainty. Higher up, they buy continuity, global reach, and the ability to keep an entire organization moving around them. Two people can walk through the same private terminal, board aircraft parked meters apart, and still be living in completely different worlds. One has bought a better flight. The other has bought authority over time, distance, and access. That is the hidden hierarchy of private aviation. It begins with the passenger who buys a place on someone else's aircraft. It ends with the person whose aircraft functions like a private headquarters in the sky. This is not an official ranking. It is an editorial hierarchy based on what the passenger is really purchasing: access, control, certainty, continuity, reach, or autonomy. The same runway, 6 completely different relationships with time. The first traveler is not buying full control. They are buying access to the experience. That could mean a seat on a semi-private service, a shared charter, or an empty leg flight created when an aircraft must reposition for its next booking. Smaller terminals mean fewer crowds, faster boarding in a calmer cabin. But there is a catch the photographs do not show. The passenger is still fitting into someone else's schedule. The route already exists. The departure time is largely fixed. If the aircraft needs to move somewhere else, the passenger adapts. That is the difference between looking private and actually controlling the mission. At this stage, the traveler has escaped much of the airport experience, but they have not escaped the timetable. They can experience the lounge, the ramp, and the cabin, but the clock still belongs to someone else. The next traveler stops buying a seat and starts buying the schedule. This is where private aviation becomes a tool. Instead of joining an existing flight, the client charters the aircraft. They choose the departure time. They choose the airport. They decide who travels with them. The real luxury is that the aircraft is organized around the journey instead of the journey being organized around an airline. A smaller airport can remove hours of driving. A team can visit 2 cities and return home that evening. A family can travel without dividing its journey across a crowded terminal. People often call this convenience, but convenience is only the surface. What they are really buying is the ability to compress a day. A commercial itinerary can decide where the traveler sleeps, when the meeting begins, and which connection can be risked. A charter turns those constraints into choices. They use it when controlling the day is worth more than the cost of the aircraft. That is when private aviation begins functioning as infrastructure. But control over one journey creates a new problem: inconsistency. Aircraft availability changes. Peak travel periods become difficult. The cabin, crew, and operator may differ from one trip to another. For frequent travelers, that becomes friction. This is where jet cards, memberships, and fractional ownership enter the hierarchy. Fractional ownership means purchasing a share of an aircraft rather than buying the entire aircraft. The provider handles pilots, maintenance, safety requirements, and much of the operational complexity. The psychology changes again. The client is no longer purchasing a single flight. They are purchasing confidence that a flight can be produced when needed. They want to call one number, follow a familiar process, and trust that an aircraft of the expected standard will appear. The aircraft may change, but the expected experience should not. This stage is about removing negotiation from every journey. Earlier, the question was, can I fly privately this time? Now it becomes, how reliably can private aviation fit into my life? That is the transition from control to certainty. Then comes the point where access has become frequent and strategic enough to justify owning the entire aircraft. Whole ownership does not make aviation simple. It creates an operating system. Pilots, training, maintenance, insurance, scheduling, hangar space, compliance, management. That complexity is why ownership reveals a different motive. The owner does not buy an aircraft because it is easier than chartering. They buy it because the aircraft can be shaped around one person, one family, or one organization. The cabin, equipment, crew, and schedule can all be shaped around recurring missions. A mid-sized jet such as the Citation Latitude offers a 6-foot stand-up cabin and a published range of 2,700 nautical miles under the manufacturer's stated conditions. Larger aircraft add range, cabin zones, and sleeping arrangements. But size alone does not determine value. A smaller aircraft based near the owner's home and matched to frequent regional missions may create more value than a larger jet used occasionally. The owner is buying continuity, the same environment, standards, and readiness. The aircraft becomes less like a reservation and more like a private department. It does not merely save hours. It begins to reorganize the owner's geography. Then distance itself becomes the problem. For the global principle, the question is no longer whether private aviation can save a day. The question is whether distance can be made strategically irrelevant. Ultra-long-range aircraft are built for journeys that cross continents without a fuel stop interrupting the mission. Gulfstream states that the G700 can fly up to 6,650 nautical miles at Mach 0.9 under its published conditions. Bombardier presents the Global 8000 with 4 cabin suites and a range of 8,000 nautical miles. Those figures matter because they change what a schedule can contain. A traveler can leave one global center, sleep, work, and arrive in another without entering a connecting airport. But the deeper purchase is not range, it is continuity of role. The passenger does not stop being a chief executive, investor, or decision-maker because the world is large. The cabin allows work, rest, and confidential conversations to continue, with separate zones for meetings, quiet, and sleep. The aircraft protects the traveler's effectiveness on arrival. At lower stages, private aviation saves time before and after the flight. Here, it also changes the quality of the hours spent in the air. The global principle is not trying to make the flight impressive. They are trying to stop the flight from interrupting the life built around it. And then comes the final transformation. The aircraft stops behaving like a conventional business jet. It becomes a flying headquarters. Corporate airliners, such as the Airbus corporate jet family, use airliner-scale cabins to create something closer to a residence or office in the sky. Airbus describes the ACJ220 as offering more than 786 square feet of cabin floor across 6 living zones. Layouts can include work areas, lounges, dining space, a private suite, and a bathroom. But cabin size is only part of the story. At this stage, the aircraft may carry advisors, security, support staff, and communications equipment needed to keep an institution functioning. It can become a mobile command environment, private residence, or secure decision-making space across borders. This is no longer the purchase of a faster journey. It is the purchase of autonomy. The passenger does not simply want to reach the destination without using an airline. They want the organization around them to remain intact throughout the journey. The office travels, the security travels, the household travels, the authority travels. At the beginning of the hierarchy, the passenger fits into an available seat. At the top, aviation is redesigned around the passenger's entire world. So there is the hidden hierarchy of private aviation. First, access to the experience, then control over a journey, then certainty that an aircraft can be available, then continuity through whole ownership, then global reach without interruption, and finally autonomy, the ability to move an entire institution without surrendering control. These categories are not rigid. Owners may combine charter, fractional access, and whole ownership depending on the mission. The aircraft itself does not always reveal the stage. The motive does. From the outside, every passenger appears to be buying luxury. From the inside, the product keeps changing. First, it removes the airport. Then it controls the schedule. Then it removes uncertainty. Then it preserves continuity. Then it compresses the planet. And finally, it allows an entire organization to move without giving up authority. The jet was never the real product. The real product was control. Control over the schedule. Control over distance. Control over who travels. Control over what continues while the world moves beneath you. So which matters most to you? Access, control, certainty, continuity, global reach, or complete autonomy? Leave your answer in the comments. And subscribe to The Uncommon Ledger for more documentaries decoding the hidden hierarchy behind cars, watches, yachts, aircraft, and the objects that exist beyond ordinary luxury.